Hey, I'm Claude. I'm one of the pastors here at Williamsburg Community Chapel. It's good to be on the front porch today. So I've been here about 4 years, came 4 years ago to be pastoral care pastor, and then I guess about 2 years ago, moved into an associate pastor role as the serve team leader when Doug Bunn left to go plant Eastside Church. So that's who I am, and I'm here to answer some questions and interact with you a bit. The first question is, why do I have a troll in my office? Well, he joined me right here. I can tell you, I'm not even sure why I have this troll. I'm not sure where it came from, but it showed up in my office in my previous church about 10 years ago. And someone knew that I was an Orioles fan because this is an Orioles troll, which is why it has orange hair and has Orioles written on it. They didn't know that I was a troll fan, that I grew up with trolls. I have one sister who's older, 5 years older than I am, and one of the things we did growing up when I was young is we had trolls. And we had contests with our trolls. We had to build homes for them. And the only thing we could use was Scotch tape and shoeboxes. And so we used to build troll houses. My houses were always better than her houses, I could say that. And I could build a sofa out of a shoebox. I could build a 3-story mansion. My trolls lived the good life. That's why, one reason I still like trolls. That's the first question. Second question, what's that white thing behind me? Well, that's our new tent that we've rented to use for some outdoor services that we'll be having. And one of the things that we'll be doing is this coming Sunday night, we'll be meeting at 7 o'clock for a time of outdoor worship. Under the tent, under the trees around the tent, bring your own chair or blanket to sit on the ground. And we're going to begin to meet together in some ways that we haven't done before, not with any regularity. And one of those is outside using a tent. So that's something we look forward to. Another question, for those who know that I'm a bird watcher, and a few of you do, someone asked, what's the coolest bird I've seen in Williamsburg? Well, I usually see the usual suspects, I say, at the bird feeders, the ones I expect to see. My best encounter, though, has probably been with a Caspian tern, which is a large tern bird. A tern is like a gull, only different. A gull has been described as a rat with wings. Terns are a little bit cooler than that. They have a little sharper beak. They have a cleaner, leaner look. A Caspian tern is one of our larger terns. I encountered one along the shore of the James River one day about 2 years ago when I was walking, and he was in some distress. He just sat there. That's unlike a bird to sit there. Well, I walked up to him, was able to actually touch him and stroke his head. He didn't seem to have an injury, but he had a band on his leg, which has a number. And I know there's a registry for that, so I pulled out my smartphone, went online, looked up his number, and realized that this particular Caspian tern had been born on the eastern shore of Virginia, was banded there, and had been seen in a variety of places. But it turns out he was 23 years old, which was the 5th oldest tern recorded that we know about in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I left him alone. I don't know if he was on his way out. I have a feeling he was, but he had a good long life. That's one of the coolest birds I've seen in Williamsburg. Question that's come up, what's your favorite thing to do in quarantine? Well, one of my favorite things to do, of course, is to watch birds. And it's such a wonderful gift from God that birds have not been affected by the quarantine, that they've been as active as always, and we've been able to slow down a bit and watch them. So been able to watch birds even in our townhouse, in the front of our townhouse. We have some boxwood. An eastern towhee put their nest in pretty early in the boxwood, raised its young there. We have a deck on the back. We have bird feeders that attract different birds. So I've been bird watching even in quarantine. And I've been walking a lot, so trying to get in the equivalent of 10,000 steps a day, that recommended healthy way to walk, and have been doing that faithfully. One of my favorite things to do in quarantine, get outside as much as I can. So I was out this morning taking a walk before 6 because it wasn't raining when I left. And when I got home, I was soaked. It started raining, but that's okay. It was great to be outside. Next question, when is the chapel opening? Well, we haven't completely closed all this time. There have been things going on, most of it digitally. And we are saying we sort of have a gradual reopening to in-person get-together time. So we had communion here outside on Sunday night. We'll have this coming Sunday night a worship service under the tent at 7. But our kind of reopening time to gather for worship will be on Sunday the 28th. And what we'll do then is what we're calling outside, inside, online. So we'll meet outside at 9 for worship, inside at 11 for worship, and both of those live streamed online. So outside, inside, online, June 28th is the plan for our reopening. And we're looking forward to that. Just the chance to be together with people who can make it, who feel safe enough to come and feel confident to do that. But if you don't feel that way, we're still online. We're still going to be present online with live streaming, so as if you're right here with us. And we'll hope to continue to do that for a while, as long as we need to, as we continue to help the body to be together. Next question, how did you and your wife meet? Well, my wife's name is Lee, L-E-I-G-H. Because of a name like that, L-E-I-G-H, she's called any number of things. She's called Leah, but her name's Lee. Just like my name, Claude. I'm called any number of things, but we won't go into that. But we met in college. We met at an InterVarsity fellowship group meeting at the University of Richmond. I was a junior. She was a brand new freshman, and she came to the first InterVarsity gathering of that particular year in the fall of way back when, the mid-'70s. And I remember meeting her at the door because I was assigned that night for our first meeting of InterVarsity that fall to greet all the newcomers. And Lee walked up with a friend of hers named Ann Petty, and I introduced myself, welcomed to InterVarsity, and the first thing that they said was, "Oh, are you a freshman too?" Which as a junior, I didn't take real kindly to, even though I was young looking, of course, at the time. And I said, "No, I'm a junior," and they kind of giggled and laughed and thought, well, we didn't make a very good first impression. But it turns out Lee made a very good first impression. And it didn't take long before I had a chance to get closer to her, to ask her out for a date. And that pretty much settled the deal. So we met in college, dated for 5 years before we got married, and now have been married for 40 years just this past May. So that's our life together, and it's been wonderful. Have you been doing any gardening during quarantine? Well, we have a deck, and we do some gardening on it, but we've sort of given up on vegetables on our deck because, like many people who live in Williamsburg and have trees anywhere near them, squirrels come and eat everything that we have in our garden. So we've gone just to flowers and shrubs. So we have a lot on our deck. We have everything from gardenia and hydrangea to boxwood. We have a little bit of everything, something blooming all the time. One of our favorite plants is Evolvus, which has as its other name, Blue My Mind. It's a blue flower plant. So this year we sort of going for the blue and yellow theme. We switch it up year to year, and we just love being outside with the garden and spend most of our time when we can out on our deck. It's windy here, and the question board just blew down. If there's another question, I wouldn't know what it is. But Luke is great to flip the page and see if there's another. How do you keep the squirrels away? If I could answer that, I would not be here right now. I would be living the high life. I don't have any idea how you keep the squirrels away. What I do is that I only feed the birds one type of seed most of the time. If I'm trying to attract the normal seed-eating birds, I only use safflower seed. That's a little white seed. It's not like the bigger black sunflower seed or the mixture. I use safflower seed. Squirrels don't like that most of the time. But I was talking to Hunter Rue just this week, who tried safflower seed to see if the birds would get more than the squirrels, and he said squirrels ate the safflower seed. So, you know, squirrels are pretty sly, pretty slick. I also put out dried mealworms for bluebirds. The squirrels don't tend to eat those, I don't think. But those stinking squirrels will get anything you put out, and I've tried different types of bird feeders with different types of baffles and guards and domes and cages, And my experience has been the squirrels win every time. So I'm really not sure how you keep the squirrels away. One of the things that I have tried that maybe at least doesn't keep them away but gives them a bad taste is that I mix, sometimes if I try a different bird seed, I'll mix in some hot cayenne pepper, either the powder kind or even some chili pepper with the seeds. And they don't like the taste of the hot, whereas the birds apparently have no taste for hot. They can't tell the difference. So that's another way you might try to keep the birds away. I mean, obviously the ultimate way to keep the squirrels away. The big way to keep a squirrel away, I guess, is simply not to feed the birds, but that's not a good solution. And I guess even if I did that, the squirrels, I've noticed on our deck, will come up and bury nuts in our flower pots. And I've actually seen a squirrel come up and bury a nut while there is another squirrel in the tree next to the deck watching. As soon as the first squirrel leaves, having buried his nut in a safe spot, the next squirrel comes along, digs up the nut, takes it away and eats it. So squirrel life is interesting. It's almost like being a squirrel watcher as opposed to just a bird watcher, but I'd rather watch the birds. Next question, what have you been learning during quarantine? Well, like most of us, you've been learning what it means to live a life apart from the people you're normally with. For introverts, which I am one, that's a little easier than extroverts, I think. But one of the things I've been learning during that time is the way that memories can help through a time like that. Even nostalgia can help think through other times. So I have a relative, it's actually Lee's relative, one of her brothers-in-law. She has 3 sisters, and one of those sisters' husbands writes a column for Psychology Today. And his most recent column was about this, how nostalgia can help us through COVID-19. And he writes about going to see his mother-in-law, which was also my mother-in-law, when his children were younger, and how she would often, when they would come, and she would do the same when Lee and I would come to see her and bring our 3 daughters, she would stock her freezer with food, breakfast food that was easy to fix, easy just to put in a toaster. So it was usually toaster strudels. So there were toaster strudels available, so whenever you woke up or whenever the children woke up, they could have a toaster strudel. Well, Lee's brother-in-law, his name is Hal. He's an English professor at Mars Hill University. He writes about the fact that recently he found in his freezer a toaster strudel. He said, I don't even know where it came from. I haven't had one in years and years, but I popped it into the toaster because I wanted something to eat for breakfast. And he said, the first bite I took just took me right back to having young children, being at mother-in-law's house, enjoying toaster strudels. And he writes about the fact that nostalgia, bringing back memories like that, helps us live through a time when we feel like we're distanced from each other, sometimes even feel like we're distanced from ourselves. And so nostalgia can be a helpful thing. So is that a way to go through, or something that I've learned about what we're going through in this time? Yeah. Being able to think through for me, some good memories of how God has worked in my life, how there have been times when I've been sure that He was there, that He has met me in a time of need, that my faith has been proven true, not because my faith, but because He's true. So it's been for me a time of reflection. Also been a time to read, so I've enjoyed some wonderful books and will continue to read some great books. Which one of your daughters is your favorite? Oh man. Well, you get in trouble with a question like that. And I remember on the television series Downton Abbey, where Lord Grantham, one of the characters, has 3 daughters. And in one of the conversations with one of his daughters, I think it happens to be the middle daughter, he talks about the fact that, I love you all the same. I don't have a favorite. And the daughter says, why do parents always say that when it's never, ever really true? Well, I really do love all my daughters. I think the same. Our 3 daughters are kind of different from each other. Sometimes families have kids and the kids are very similar. Well, ours not so much. Now, our daughters are kind of different from each other. Mostly introverts like their parents. One, our youngest daughter, more on the extroverted side for sure. Oldest daughter, she lives in Europe. We see her less often, but because of wonderful technology, we get to talk with her on WhatsApp and see what's going on. She loves being in Europe. She and her husband, she married a Frenchman. They live in Luxembourg. She'll probably never move back here. Middle daughter, scientist, works in a lab, as does her husband. Her quarantine time has been in a lab. She's been working a whole lot, as has her husband. Youngest daughter, as I said, the most outgoing, the one who doesn't really ever get upset about much of anything, who went to college saying, I can't wait just to go and have fun, because that's kind of the way she does life, which is not a bad way. So I like all three of them.
Which one is named Kat?
That's the youngest.
She's the one who asked the question.
Kat, did she really? All right, Kat, well, here's what you get for that. There'll be penalties for that. My word for Kat growing up was, don't make me spank. I mean, I never had to, but just in case. Kat, you're so silly. And don't let Emily or Lauren know. I won't tell them. Next question. Talk about your journey to becoming a grief pastor. Well, it's pretty easy to be a pastor who causes grief. I've done that well. I've grieved a lot of people. I was thinking about my last church assignment before coming to the chapel. Was in Suffolk for 10 years and preached almost every Sunday. I rarely took a Sunday off. It was a solo pastorate, small church. So I was thinking about that one day after I left, 10 years. So I preached at least 50 times a year. That means they heard me 500 times in 10 years. That would cause grief. If I had to hear me 500 times in 10 years, I might be grieved. But my journey to becoming a pastoral care pastor has sort of been just God equipping me in some ways with empathy and listening skills, and also some training, particularly through ministries like Stephen Ministry, which is some of the best training I've ever experienced on how to give care to people. And just a heart for people, to love them through whatever they're going through. So that's sort of been my journey. What's your favorite snack? I have a sweet tooth that is like huge. Like if it showed up in my mouth, I would look like a saber-toothed tiger. And the sweet one would be the two big ones. So almost anything with sugar in it is unfortunately what I would usually snack on. I love cake. I like Skittles. I take sugar almost any way I can get it. But the older I've gotten, doctors have told me you should not eat so much sugar because you will become pre-diabetic or you will be in trouble. So I've tried to behave, I'll put it that way. Sometimes I behave better than others. But right now, actually for breakfast, I had a piece of pound cake. I guess I didn't behave too well today. I probably won't have too much more sugar today. So lots of different snacks that I could eat. I know, that's good. That's all the questions for now. Well, it's been great to be with you. Thanks for this time on the front porch. Hope you'll be able to join us if you can, here Sunday night at 7 for worship. If not, it'll be live streamed. You'll be able to join us there. And then, of course, in the 28th of June, when we gather back together on site for worship, outside, inside, and online. Hope to see you then. Be blessed.